Question 7. Looking back at your preliminary task, and what do you feel you have learnt in the progression from it to the full product? The preliminary task carried out by myself at the beginning of the course was focused mainly on the three main camera techniques. This is the 180-degree rule, shot, reverse shot, and match and action. Prior to this preliminary task, I didn't know what these techniques were, as I've never studied media before. In order to gain a better understanding of these rules, I went off and researched them. Researched how they are used in actual film. For example, shot reverse shot is used predominantly for conversation and make it easy for the audience to recognise that the two characters are in conversation. I had to implement all of these techniques into an opening sequence with a nice flow and absolute continuity to ensure that it looked as professional as possible. This introduced me to media, and these techniques have stuck with me. Whilst researching scripts, I learnt the director's script, which is a fully coordinated script which includes italics, bold characters, different colours and brackets. Italics means speech, bold characters indicated the names of people, and green coloured writing meant the location. This benefited me as it directed me throughout the opening sequence, and I knew what was happening in each scene and secured a better understanding of what was happening in each scene. The script writing helped me plan out what will happen in sequence and help me identify any misconceptions in my video and anything that wouldn't work. Additionally, during research surrounding my opening sequence, I learnt about the shot list and the shooting schedule. This shooting schedule comprised of a detailed list of every individual shot indicated by a camera angle, which characters will be in that scene, and what they will be wearing. The shot list described where every shot will take place in a chronological order, what happens in the scene, and it describes the camera work. This helped me massively as it organised my opening sequence very well, and all I had to do was to read it. As it is direct and easy to follow, and therefore this meant it was easy for me to film. Furthermore, the creation of my animatic was important in the production of my opening sequence and made me realise why animatics are used in professional film industry. Essentially, an animatic is a cartoon version of every shot that happens in the opening sequence. The animatic included camera angles and a brief description of what happens in each scene. The process is extremely beneficial as the illustrations allow the director to see how the film will play out before actual filming, and this then gives them time to change anything if necessary and air out any misconceptions. From my research and planning, I have seen myself improving many aspects of creating an opening sequence. For example, from researching codes and conventions of a thriller, I have a greater knowledge of how to portray a thriller and make it look more professional. In this research, I found out that quick cuts, use of shadows, low-key lighting and suspenseful music are all codes and conventions of a thriller, so I had to make sure that my opening sequence incorporated the majority of these to fortify the idea that my opening sequence was a thriller. Not only this, but from researching age ratings, I have been able to make my opening sequence a 15, which is appropriate to my target audience. I learnt that the age rating of 15 was perfect for my opening sequence, as my video has a mild amount of expletives, which is allowed in the 15 rating. When evaluating a well-known title opening sequence, it influenced me and gave me ideas of how to present my thriller title opening sequence, specifically how to place my titles and for how long I should put my titles on screen for. The opening sequence I analysed was The Dark Knight, which is a thriller, and this taught me how to build tension. From this I identified and saw how the codes and conventions were used, including low-key lighting when introducing titles, and quick cuts throughout the opening sequence as they're robbing a bank. They also set the tempo for the film through audio, incorporating a fast-paced song to make the opening sequence more intense. Due to the research on codes and conventions, it helped me understand why these conventions were used. From my research, particularly on genres, codes and conventions, I have gained much knowledge which has benefited me greatly when constructing my opening sequence, as my understanding of a thriller is better and I know how professional companies make thrillers and what they incorporate in order to make the film more exciting, suspenseful and scary, which is ultimately the aim of a thriller. I completed a questionnaire for audience research which comprised of questions that would regard my opening sequence. For example, I asked what attracted my people to my opening sequence and what you think the target audience is. This helped me for the entirety of the rest of developing my opening sequence, because the feedback which I received from the survey, I had to improve my opening sequence to meet my target audience and genre, which would overall make my product more professional. I managed my time fairly well and dedicated hours in developing my opening sequence to try and make it the very best I could. For example, I made the animatic drawings which I used as a template for my opening sequence, and this benefited me a lot as I already knew what I had to do. Furthermore, hours of my time were put into research about thrillers, which in the end helped me a lot as I had a better idea of what to include in order to make my opening sequence more appealing to my audience. For example, faster cuts to create a more intense atmosphere, and including eerie music which evokes fear. I have incorporated some of these techniques that I have learned in the preliminary task, as I use match and action when my main character is walking out of the door. I have used shot reverse shot when the protagonist is inspecting the footage on the camera in order to show his full reaction of what he has just witnessed. I have used these techniques in my opening sequence because I believe these make the final product more professional. Unfortunately, there were no scenes which would let me incorporate the 180-degree rule due to the fast pace of the opening sequence. I have tried to use many camera angles as I have analysed films and realised that there are so many camera angles used, and therefore if I use many, then the product will resemble a proficient opening sequence. Camera angles like low-angle shot of the main character's shoes when he is putting them on, because this adds focus to the shoes which he is wearing, which are Adidas, to make it more relatable to my target audience. I've used POV to give the audience a first-hand view of what is happening and therefore engaging the audience with the film, when the main character is worried and looking outside of his blinds to see if anyone is around. The accumulation of these camera angles ultimately creates a more professional product. I used a close-up of my main protagonist's face when witnessing the footage on the camera to capture his real emotion and to demonstrate that he was really worried. I also used wide shots, but especially when my main character is jumping over a puddle, as it displays him for going for a jog, and also the location behind him, which is the forest. With the earphones, I believe that I have used sound appropriately, as well as the sound I put in towards the end of my opening sequence in order to build suspense and tension. When the main character takes his earphones out, the music becomes quieter, making it more realistic with a good flow. I've used sound suspenseful music at the end of my opening sequence purposely to build tension and to build up to the point where my main character encounters the antagonist. Towards the end of my opening sequence, I edited my video tactfully to make these shots shorter and snappier, which conforms to the codes and conventions of a thriller, and because it builds tension. My editing was better than my preliminary task, as I was only just introduced to the editing software, and throughout the year I have got to know the tools and how to use them effectively. For example, the cutting tool I used at the end to cut scenes short to speed up the tempo of the video to reflect the worried protagonist and to conform to the convention of a thriller having quick cuts. During my opening sequence, I ensured that the main focus of every shot was in the middle, as the audience can identify the main focus and it brings attention to the exact thing. For example, at the end of the opening sequence, my antagonist is framed centrally with a knife in the centre too, because I aim to bring attention to him in order for the audience to ask questions. In my preliminary task, I didn't take into account the background of the video during framing. But when directing my opening sequence, I put a lot of thought into what would feature in the background and made sure the focus was on the main character. In my preliminary task, I didn't care what my characters were wearing at the time, as it wouldn't be distributed amongst an audience, whereas when devising my opening sequence, I had to pick and choose what costumes they would wear in order to appeal and be relatable to my target audience. For example, Adidas shoes, as they are popular amongst teenagers and young adults, as well as Admiral, as it is a popular brand which appeals to the modern day teenager. The use of the phone is an important prop, as it represents how the world is becoming more technologically advanced and conforms to the stereotypes that teenagers cannot leave their phone. This also reinforced by the protagonist easily using the camera. With the antagonist, I used a big parka, as this would be a big disguise for the murderer, which is what a murderer would aim to do. Due to the fact there are only 2 characters in my opening sequence, it was very easy to me to organise my actors, as we made sure we would be free on days and we would film without a big group distracting each other, and generally we finished the process of filming in a faster time than if I decided I wanted more characters. During the process of filming, my hardware skills improved massively. I can hold the camera steadily in order to get the best possible cut, as well as being able to zoom to bring focus to whatever I was zooming at. I learned how to use the playback function on the camera, which was important, as in the opening sequence there is a scene where my main character uses the playback function. I used the tripod to stabilise my camera to make it look more professional, as it wouldn't shake. During the process of editing and research, I learnt how to display my titles properly. For example, my production logo and title logo has to be placed centrally and displayed for more than 3 seconds, so the audience can recognise the title and who has made the opening sequence. Furthermore, I learnt that produced by is meant to be central to the screen and be on the screen for at least 3 seconds, whereas starring roles are placed in the corners of a screen but equally get as much display times as produced by. But this is because the producers are more important in the production of the film, whereas actors aren't as important.